quickly to go through our agenda today. We're going to start with some of the kind of preamble. As those of you who've been to these presentations know, we always start with a benchmark statement, taking this back to some of the values that were developed last year for the project. Well, to touch a little bit on the project background for anyone who's not familiar with that. Site and program, then we'll talk about the architectural design. We'll talk about schedule, and then we'll have kind of a Q&A discussion, and we're here till 1:30, so please don't be shy about asking questions or giving your feedback. This is really the big chance for students who aren't part of the general planning or the specific planning committees to give their feedback, and it's really valuable to us to hear from you. So, starting with benchmark statement. Last year we worked with the Student Society to develop a benchmark statement that basically serves as the measuring tool for decision making as we move through the project. And so when we make decisions in the design, we always test it back and does it meet these objectives? And in that process we identified 4 kind of overarching principles for this project. The first one is student focus, and basically that means being the student's building, and will be the heart of the student experience. Be an SFSS operated building where students control the activities taking place inside the building. Position the Student Society admin offices in a location that's visible and accessible to students. A place that instills unity among students, builds pride in being an SFU student and the Vancouver region, and is identifiable as the student union building and includes a clear wow factor. Second principle was a sense of community. So that means promoting a sense of community and a place to be inspired, creative, and collaborative. The building has to be comfortable, inviting, welcoming, and fun. It has to be located in a central location with ample room for a variety of activities. And this goes back to how we selected the site that we're in, and that being a very central site on campus. Creating home away from home for students and providing a sense of home and hearth and a place for individuals and communities to congregate and interact. Outstanding design was the third overarching principle, and what this means is being an example of outstanding design with its own distinct identity on the campus. Creating a focal point or postcard image of the campus living room. Building has to be open, transparent, full of natural light, and promotes interaction with and relationships on campus among all the students by being a visual catalog of the activities inside. And really what that means is when you come into the building, you can understand what's going on and you can see what's going on. Things aren't hidden away behind doors or down like narrow little corridors to try to find an activity or a space or a program. The building has to be socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable, and incorporate welcoming, effective, and dignified universal access for people of all abilities. And then finally, incorporating durable materials that require minimal maintenance. Sorry about that. And then the final overarching principle is nature. Celebrating and connecting with the natural mountain environment, and at every opportunity reminding students of their unique location and surroundings. The building has to feature views to the exterior, use natural materials, and incorporate covered outdoor patios so that students can enjoy the outdoor spaces in inclement weather. A little bit about the project background, just a couple of slides on that. For anyone that recalls last year, I guess it was, we started working on this project last May, where we identified several sites for the project, and 3 of them were the Main Street site, which you recall was the transportation center, Crossroads, which is the site that we're in right now, and the Treehouse site, which is the old Shell gas station. And through a process of understanding, looking at the benchmark statement and working with students, we made the recommendation to consider the Crossroads site as the most appropriate site for the project based on a number of factors. One of them being location, because the success of these types of buildings really does depend on being in the center of everything. And these are some of the boards that we developed at the end of that process that were used for Clubs Days last year and then through some of the fall planning. And then at the end, we developed a report that summarized kind of the program, which we also wrote, and the site recommendations and the various issues around each of the sites. And there's a copy of it right here, and I think Mark as well has a copy if you're interested in reading that. 90 pages. So site and program. Just in case anybody doesn't know, this is our site right here. Maggie Benson, which we're located in right now, is this building, Combo Mall, the AQ, and then Shrub Science is right there. And so we're in the site which currently has the Sustainable Learning Gardens, or Sustainable SFU Learning Gardens. A couple of pictures of the site so you can see the gardens. This is looking south, looking towards Maggie Benson and the theater, and then looking up towards the AQ. And then finally looking at the site again from Combo Mall. And one thing, note this right here because it does come into play, and it's one of the things that helped us to also derive where the site was located, because having this service access road is really important for these buildings. Before I get into anything else, I just want to touch on SFU reference levels, because it tends to get confusing when we start referencing level 8 and level 11, level 10, because nobody really knows what that is. So SFU had, as you all know, has different floor levels for every building, and they're all referenced differently, even if it's on the same elevation. And so a 1,000 could be 2,000 somewhere else. So what they did, I think a while ago, is they took all of the different floors at SFU, which total about 22 different levels, and they said Combo Mall is level 10. And so if we look at Combo Mall as level 10, that would be the campus reference level. So our building is level 10 on the Combo Mall level. Anything above goes up, anything below goes down, and that references the campus. We're also going to refer to the building, though, at the same floor levels as Maggie Benson, which might help to say, okay, if this is level 2,000 of Maggie Benson, it'll be level 9 or 2,000 of the sub. Does that make sense? Perfect. Just a couple of, hopefully everybody can see this. These are just some of the site factors that we've looked at in situating the building and how it relates to the surrounding context. So on the left side is level 8 or level 1,000. And what we're looking at is connecting to that loading service access road, which I noted in that photograph. And that's really important so that we can provide truck access and loading access to our building on the lowest floor. On the next level, which is level 9 or 2,000, we're connecting to the Maggie Benson food court. And this was a decision we made during last year when we were looking at the sites, and because there's a lot of that kitchen infrastructure in this building, it made sense to just leave it here and create a seamless connection between the two buildings in order to take advantage of that and maybe save the money that it would cost to build that in our building and put it towards something else, whether it's furniture or finishes or something else within the new building. We're also maintaining some exiting for the theater as well as loading for the theater that has to be considered, and then having some access, vehicular access from the south, but there's no parking associated with the building. So if you're going to come in here, you're looking at perhaps a parking in Combo Mall Parkade or elsewhere on campus. I should mention there is no direct connection to the parkade, unlike what you see here. And part of that is we have to maintain some heights over the loading road, and we can't make that connection across. On level 10, which is the Combo Mall level, or 3,000, we're connecting to Combo Mall. So we're going to have a connection the full width of that Freedom Square width. We're also creating an outdoor kind of plaza area on the east side of the building between our building and the AQ. And then on level 11, which is the upper walkway level, we're looking at connecting to the science corridor, or the south corridor, the AQ, where all the lecture theaters are, and that'll be kind of a pedestrian walkway that connects to the new sub. This is just a diagram showing some of the existing circulation patterns on campus. And really what you're looking at here is, this is called an axonometric, which is looking at, if you're up in the sky and you're looking down at something, pretending you're a bird, I guess. And so it's a perspective, or it's an axonometric of the Maggie Benson, the theater, Combo Mall, and the AQ here. And so when you want to go into the food court, you're walking around under the walkway and through the Maggie Benson and around. And our goal really is to create kind of that connection that provides that level of choice so that you can actually have covered access to get from here to here without going outside. And then this diagram really just, again, touches on all the different connections we're making. So Level 8, or the lowest floor, we're going to have access from the exterior, and this will all be kind of regraded down, that parking lot area that's out there. Level 11, we're connecting over to the AQ on the east side. Level 10, we're connecting to the AQ on Combo Mall, or Freedom Square, and level 9, we're connecting to the Maggie Benson. These are just a few solar studies, and this is in the report. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but one of the things that was really important was making sure that our building doesn't create a lot of shadow on Freedom Square and on the existing campus outdoor spaces. And so what you see here is the existing site, or the existing condition. And so I know it's a little hard to see from where everybody's standing, but this is the theater, this is Freedom Square, and this is the AQ. And you can see at 9 o'clock in the morning in the fall equinox, which would be September 21st, the shadow that's created on the steps of the AQ as well as on our site. At noon, that shadow is pretty much minimized, just a little bit from the upper walkway. And then at 3 o'clock, you get a little bit of shadow from Combo Mall, and then our site gets some from the theater. When you add the building into the site, you can see the difference here. Actually, on the AQ steps, there is no impact at 9 o'clock. At noon, again, there's no impact on Freedom Square, and then at 3 o'clock, again, no impact on Freedom Square. And that was really important, again, because the steps, from what we understand, are actually a really popular place to sit when it's sunny outside. In the summer, so this would be June 21st, looking at 9 a.m. Most of this is in sun, again, noon and 3, and you can see very little shadow on Freedom Square in these areas. When you add the building, again, no impact on Freedom Square from the new building. But there is some shadowing on some of these outdoor spaces surrounding the new outdoor spaces surrounding the sub. December 21st, I know nobody's on campus on December 21st, but there is some impact from the new building. But going into the existing context, you can see at 9 a.m., the AQ actually shadows most of Freedom Square. At noon, the upper walkway shadows about half of it in this area, and then at 3 p.m., Combo Mall actually causes quite a bit of shadow, and you can see that right here. When you add the building into the site, this dark triangle is actually where the two shadows overlap. So the building shadow and then the AQ shadow, and so we're not actually making that condition any worse. When you look at noon, we are adding additional shadows to Freedom Square, but we're not affecting the steps, which have some sunlight. And then at 3 p.m. you can see again that overlapping of the shadow. So we are having an effect on December 21st at 3 p.m. where the steps would have been in sun, that you can see right here, but we're shadowing that. So moving on to the program, one of the things that we thought was really unique about this project when we started writing the program and talking to students was how much of a real student union building this is. Everything about this is about students and student spaces. There aren't any kind of admin spaces. There's no bookstore in the building. While that supports students, it's not really that kind of community building type of program. And so the building essentially has spaces for the student organizations and student clubs. There's meeting spaces, lounge spaces, storage spaces for clubs. There's general student lounge spaces and study spaces. Again, understanding that not all students join clubs, so is there space for them in the building? Absolutely. There's a large multi-purpose space on the top level of the building that could be used for larger activities. One of the things that we heard when we were writing the program is that Combo Mall is great, but it's so big, and when you want to have a smaller event, say 300 people, there's nowhere on campus to have that. And so there's a space in this building that can accommodate those types of activities. There's a cabaret, which I think everyone has a slightly different definition of what a cabaret is, but the idea is that there could be some evening performances taking place there, as well as during the day, and that might draw people in from Freedom Square. There's a cafe in the building, and that is the one kind of food service / beverage service the building is actually going to include inside it. There's workshop space, there's dance and music rehearsal rooms, there's a community kitchen, There's a games lounge as well as the outdoor space, taking advantage of some of the rooftops in the building. This is just a diagram, and what we wanted to take out of this was the fact that the purple, the green, and the pink, that's 75% of the program is really about student space. The remaining 25% is SFSS admin spaces, some of the building services, the food really, this isn't the cafe, there's a dining component where we've extended the size of the food court into the new building, and so basically doubled the size of this food court. And then some retail, such as the mini mart is actually moving into the building. So architectural design. Just to quickly touch on how we got to where we were. When we started in February, we developed 3 kind of schemes that could be considered for the project. And the 3 were pavilion, loft, and terrace. If anybody has been here in the last little while, you would have seen the 3. We then had a workshop with some of the SFSS as well as SFU folks that we talked about what were some of the priorities for the project. And these priorities here that include visibility from Combo Mall, but making sure that the building doesn't kind of overtake Combo Mall, visibility from Gallardi Way and how does that impact the view, connections to the direct access to the outdoors, things like exterior image and wow factor. So these are the things that are the exterior. The green dots are SFU and the red dots are students. Some of the interior pieces were interior identity, maximizing views to the north and south, maximizing daylight, creating this visual catalog, and then convenience to all spaces. You can see there are a lot more red dots on the interior spaces. So we saw that the students were really interested in that interior experience and that kind of enrichment, more so than what does the exterior look like, as much as we want to make sure that it has that wow factor. And so that led us to the conclusion that the terrace scheme was actually the one that really met all of the requirements. Some of the other schemes perhaps didn't have quite the connectedness of spaces, and they didn't provide they didn't meet all the priorities that were addressed in that workshop. And so this is kind of the basis of where we began our schematic design. And Harley's going to talk about a couple of slides.
Great. I just want to talk just briefly about the partie, the diagram that explains the building in its clear slide. I guess what you see here on the left side is one of the things that we noticed about, for example, the space that we're in right now, the Maggie Benson Center, that the student spaces tend to be in the center of the building. That's a great thing. But the challenge with that is that the student spaces don't tend to get the views outside. It tends to be a very inward-looking building because you have all the offices that kind of ring the exterior of the spaces. We wanted to actually do the opposite. We want to kind of flip it inside out, if you would. So what we're showing here is the blue on the diagram on the left is representative of the student spaces. So we wanted to create a perimeter to this building, which would actually be the lounge and student-type spaces. The yellow that you see there tends to be sort of the more enclosed program. So the smaller rooms, the smaller group rooms, the SFSS admin spaces, those types of spaces will be in the yellow. Another diagram, which I think is interesting as well, is the kind of primary circulation of the building. So this speaks to kind of the crossroads concept of the building as a whole. Really, there are kind of 2 main axes within the building. There's a north-south axis, which is designed to connect to Convo Mall and be kind of your front door to the new building, with a direct sort of view out towards the south. So as soon as you come in the building, you'll have a very kind of clear organizational spine that looks directly out to the south. But there's also a very important kind of west-east connection, and that's designed to connect the Maggie Benson Center to the AQ and Trump Science building. So really between the two kind of creates a crossroads. And you'll see within the diagram of our building that in fact what we've done is locate the elevators or the primary vertical circulation at that crossroads. So from a wayfinding standpoint, we really want to make this building as clear as possible. So this is a sort of a section, I guess, cut through the...
I like to call it like when you have a dollhouse and they close and then you open the dollhouse and you can see, I know guys won't relate to this, but you know what a dollhouse is.
Well, these are the types of drawings that architects love to do, right? But I guess what's important to see here is one of the things that we're picking up on, and you'll see this in a later slide, is really this kind of terrace massing. The building, in fact, terraces down the mountain, much like a lot of the other buildings do within the campus. But one of the challenges that come with terracing a building is how to create the kind of interconnection. And what we have here is actually a 5-story building that's interconnected at all the levels. So you have a terrace lounge, if you will, that exists as stairs and lounge spaces along those stairs that actually bridge up through the building, and there are double height spaces that are associated with that. And that leads you up to a sort of a large lounge space where there's a multi-purpose room on the 12th floor. But really it's about kind of the student experience, it's about connecting students across the building. So we just wanted to talk to also some of the kind of imagery that we have to talk about the perspectives of the building upon entry. So what we want to also create is volume. When you enter this building off of Convo Mall, you'll be greeted by a double height space. There'll be a cabaret on your right. There's the coffee shop on the left, and that clear spine, as you can kind of see, this is that north-south spine that leads you through the building. You'll actually come into the entry and be able to see all the way out, and the info desk will be there on your right side as well. Creating a clear wow factor. So I look at this and I go, wow. But I think we're really, and I hope you do too. I hope you do too. I love this. But I think what we're trying to do from the exterior expression is really pay homage, if you will, to the existing campus. There's a kind of architectural legacy that exists here that is quite clear. And what we want to do is we want to pick up on that architectural legacy. We want to convey something similar, but do it in a highly more modern way. So what we see here is a kind of a wood box, a glass-clad wood box. We're hoping that students will identify this building as being kind of, it's that glass box, it's the wood glass box. You'll be able to understand it by kind of simply the materials in which it's composed of.
One of the other things that we want to just touch on in this image is the walkway that exists in front of, between Freedom Square and the building actually becomes almost like a threshold to the building. And so you can see that this tends to look like it's hovering above that. And so one of the things we heard that was really important was really to be able, for students to be able to say, okay, if somebody asked you where's the sub, and you could say it's that building. And so having that identifiable element that that gives you the ability to differentiate it from the rest of the campus. Yeah. So the next, we kind of tried to tie all the images to some of the benchmark statement pieces. So Harley talked a little bit about the student focus, and so there's that sense of community. This slide here shows what it might look like if you were standing on level 9, which is the Maggie Benson 2000 level, at the bottom of that kind of terrace lounge, floating lounge, and looking up. And so being able to see the people that are in the building, who's in the building, what the activities in the building are, we thought was really important to create that continuity of space and to help to support that. That comfortable, inviting, fun, and welcoming, and that goes back to kind of that transparency. This will be further developed, but we're creating an outdoor plaza on the north side of the building, and so this is the walkway. You're looking towards the AQ. And right now, you'd be standing on air if you were going to stand out there right now, but that outdoor plaza will actually stretch the full width of the building, and then on the south side of the plaza will be that double height volume. There's a lounge and cabaret space, and so if there's an event at any point in time, these doors could open out and you might hear music coming out of the building, and that would draw people in from Freedom Square. And so making it something that's fun and welcoming, and that high level of transparency really does give people who walk past the ability to see what's happening inside. Providing a sense of home and hearth, a place for individuals. And so what you see here is this is actually that cabaret lounge space. The way that we've programmed it is when there's no activity taking place, like no music or some kind of event, it's just an active lounge at the front of the building. And so when you come into the main doors, which will be over here, you're sitting in this lounge area. There's a coffee shop on the other end that can help activate this, as well as the outdoor plaza. There's the info desk, and you can see all the stuff that's happening in the building to, again, help to create that visual catalog.
So as I mentioned before as well, there's a great architectural legacy to the SFU campus, and what we're looking at here actually are Arthur Erickson's original master planning sketches from the 60s. And Arthur Erickson is, of course, one of the premier architects in Canada. And we really wanted to sort of learn from the strategies that Arthur imposed upon the campus, which really developed the way in which we understand our campus now. So what you see on the left side is that, you know, we're on the top of Burnaby campus, and Arthur imagined that the AQ would kind of become the prominent building on the top of the campus, but all the other buildings adjacent to the AQ should taper down the mountain. And the idea was that you'd always be creating views outwards towards the mountains and the surrounding environment. So he really saw this as something, a way to kind of build into the landscape, be a part of the mountain. And another aspect was the Gallardi approach. So when you're actually approaching the campus from a vehicle, the corner of the AQ, that's what this is identifying here, is a very kind of prominent feature. So one of the things that was identified was that there should really not be any other structure that will want to dominate that view. That view is an important piece of the campus and should remain a kind of significant piece of architecture. So this is also an important piece. When we started looking at the views underneath the Conville Mall roof, there's a certain kind of ceremonial view that exists there. And we actually had originally, as part of one of our schemes, a building that kind of projected into this view cone. And through discussions with students and through discussions with SFU, we've since pulled it back, because really what we want to do is kind of maintain the kind of majestic quality of this view. And you'll see that what we've done is something like this. So we think, in large part, we've maintained this kind of view. You can start to see the new buildings trying to peek out just a little bit. You know, of course, it's an infill site, so we're very constrained about where we can place the building. But we've pulled it back, we've adjusted it so much so that we can still sort of get a bit of a view, but still really try to maintain the kind of majestic ceremonial view of Conville Mall. So here you can see what I mentioned before. This is the view from Gallardi Way and the prominence of the AQ. And this is with the new building in place. So you can see that the terracing of the building, in fact the way in which it kind of steps up, is created in order to preserve this kind of corner of the AQ. And in fact, that's exactly what the Maggie Benson Center does as well. So you can see that the Maggie Benson Center has a terrace as well. So this is a view of the 12th floor. So now we're on the top of the building. We're standing in the multi-purpose space, and we're looking out towards the north. So one of the things that we heard kind of loud and clear from students is daylight and views. Create daylight and views. So this is going to be an incredible space, actually. So here we're not really constrained with connecting to the various levels within SFU. Here we can have a great floor-to-ceiling height. We're showing 5 meters here from floor to ceiling, glazing that spans that 5 meters. And some sense of a flexible furnishing that you can kind of move around into groups, create group study spaces, create individual pods. So we really see this as a really light and friendly kind of environment. And we're also looking at doing a wood structure perhaps for the roof, so that's giving some warmth to the image. So if you're standing in that location, you actually turned around to look southwards, this is where you actually start to see the building kind of terrace down in that view. So the intention here is, again, to keep the lounge spaces, which we're experiencing, I guess, on the east side of the building here, as open as possible. So there's not a lot of walls kind of dividing up this space. You're seeing kind of the stairs terrace down, and you're seeing the landing levels beyond. So there's outdoor decks beyond, which will incorporate some roof gardens, some planted areas, etc. And you also clearly see the elevator as a significant component of the crossroads. And of course, the natural light coming in from the roof skylight, generous roof skylight above, that actually starts to bring daylight into the lower levels. You want to take this?
So yeah, so this goes back to that kind of idea of the visual catalog. What you see here is when you come from the AQ, that pedestrian walkway up on level 11, you come into the building and you're able to actually see through all these cutouts in the different floors. You can see multiple floors from one view, and so being able to understand what's happening in the building and what's available to students was something that we really tried to emphasize in that design. And then off to your right, you might see more of that floating lounge, and off to your left, you would see it going down. And so again, that clarity of the building and locating all of the programs along this primary circulation corridors was something that we really made an effort to do. And you'll see that as you walk through the model. So economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable. I guess it was in March, we had a sustainability workshop, and I think there were it was actually a really good turnout. We had probably 35 or 40 people come to that. And really what we wanted to do was understand priorities from students for these three kind of factors, or that three-pronged sustainability. And you can see here, these are actually images from the workshop where we looked at an exercise where we wrote down some of the priorities, and this is where people are pinning them up. And out of the workshop, we developed a series of goals, which include promoting social sustainability, which was really important for this building, and that goes back to the community building and the visual catalog and universal access and all the things that help to support the social aspects. Promoting physical and mental wellness was really important. That also touches on social sustainability. Enhancing indoor air quality was important, and making sure that there's fresh air, there's lots of light, daylight. We don't use any toxic materials or materials that have toxic elements in them. Promoting environmental stewardship, so making students actually be better. Understanding how the building is performing so that you can actually make change. And that goes to providing metering that students can actually see, and having digital dashboards that tell you how much water you're consuming, how much heat you're consuming, how much electricity. And that actually helps to make people more cognizant of their actions. Incorporating sustainable materials, reducing waste, both in the building as well as through construction. And making sure that as we design the building, we're designing it so that we actually minimize waste, and then for the waste that there is, recycling as much as we can. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions was also important. Reducing potable water consumption by a certain percentage, and we identified, say, 40% as a target. If we speak to LEED, that's one of the highest targets that they identify in the LEED scorecard, and I'll touch on that. Minimizing energy efficiency, and then promoting ecological health is also really important. And so these up here are the strategies that can be applied, and these aren't necessarily all of the strategies that we're going to use, nor are they necessarily, this is maybe more than the strategies we're gonna employ. But this actually helps to perhaps become more of a decision maker in terms of, okay, well, if I look at, healthy materials, well, how many of these goals does it achieve? And that can help us to prioritize which of these strategies we want to go with. We are having a follow-up sustainability workshop June 7th, is it? 5th. And so I encourage everybody to come, where we'll actually start to talk about cost as well, and the economic factor. So in the schematic design report, we summarized a series of strategies based on what we heard at the workshop, and roof gardens was very evident that was something that students were interested in, and that was for learning gardens and putting them on the rooftops of this building. Also helping to support kind of ecological health, and perhaps having native, insects and butterflies, and something that can help support the local habitat. Student space at the perimeter of building, that helps to promote that social sustainability, giving students the optimal spaces within the building, and also visibility into the spaces, and encourage people to come inside. Transparency, that touches back on that. Community kitchen, again, back to that social sustainability. What's better to create community than eating together and being able to cook that food together. Accessible and inclusive, making sure that the building provides opportunities for everybody or all students of all abilities. Daylight was important, and maximizing that wherever we can. Of course, on a site like ours, we are constrained in some areas of the building, so we are looking at strategies to try to maximize wherever possible. Creating an outdoor plaza, again, that social sustainability element. Creating outdoor spaces that can help to support the interior of the building. And then low carbon construction, we'll be looking at materials like wood that have a low carbon footprint in their extraction and fabrication in the building. Places for student artwork, again, that social sustainability element, and making sure that we incorporate areas where students can really start to own the building and put their stamp on it. Controlling solar heat gain inside the building, obviously this goes back to greenhouse gas emissions and reducing the energy consumption of the building. And that will be looking at exterior, some sort of solar shading element on the outside of the building. Using durable, local, and recycled materials. Looking at LED light fixtures, that's something the university is really interested in, and it is something pretty simple to put into the building. Reducing waste during construction, obviously that goes back to the waste that we talked about earlier. High performance building envelope, and that also touches on the reduced energy loads of the building. If we have a really thermally improved envelope, that it doesn't need as much mechanical equipment and energy to heat and cool it. And then renewable energy, looking at opportunities for that, such as photovoltaic panels or solar hot water, those types of features. And then finally, we're looking to design the building to LEED Gold. The LEED scorecard, which I did not include it here, but it is in the report. So we have evaluated the scorecard to make sure that we've identified all of the credits that we would be targeting. And does everybody know what LEED is actually? Does anybody not know what it is? Has everybody heard of it? Yeah, okay. So there will be a decision made on whether or not we pursue the full certification, but regardless, the building will be designed to meet LEED Gold and be as sustainable as possible within the budget that we have. And then finally, incorporating welcoming, effective, and dignified universal access. And so we do have an accessibility consultant on our team, but he does work for Mark, or for the SFSS. And really, he's here as a guide to help us to make sure that this building addresses access and inclusion. One of the things we talked about at the workshop was, what does universal access mean in the context of this building and within the budget that we have? And rather than thinking of universal access as barrier-free, how does it address all of the other kind of disabilities that are out there, from hearing impairments, mobility impairments, vision impairment, and as well as one of the biggest ones on campus is students that might suffer from stress and some kind of mental health issues. And so how do we make a building that helps to alleviate or support those types of students? What we're moving forward on is developing an access strategy, and I believe that our accessibility consultant, his name is Brad, by the way, he will be coming out here without us to meet with students and get their feedback. He felt it was really important that we weren't here so that students would be a little bit more blunt about things. And through that, we'll develop an access strategy, and then we'll have an accessible design criteria manual that's going to be specific to this building that we will use as a guide as we continue the design progress. So, and then the final concept, or the overarching principle, is nature. And so looking at incorporating outdoor patios, covered spaces, and so we have lots of opportunities for roof decks, and you can see that in the terracing. So there'll be, possibly roof decks on level 10, 11, and 12, and accessible from within the building, and then an outdoor plaza on the north and east sides. And we'll be looking at providing opportunities, and it could be through some sort of shading feature on the south side, covered areas on those roof decks for students to enjoy. I know we showed this slide, but I think it also goes back to celebrating and connecting with the natural and mountain environment, and being able to see outside on all the different floors. And if there's an opportunity to see the terracing and the outdoor plantings that are even on the roof, that helps to connect with that, with nature. And then again, featuring views to the exterior wherever we can, and we thought this was an amazing opportunity to really give students that opportunity to look towards the North Shore and seeing those mountains, where there's so few spaces that you can actually do that here, or that are enjoyable to be in. And then finally, using natural materials. So the building will have some concrete, but we'll be looking at things like metal, wood, glass, and then of course some of the green roof, which we can't discount planting as a material palette for the building. So I don't have floor plans because they're really boring. We're gonna look at the model. It comes apart, and we'll walk through the building to talk about the different spaces, and hopefully, because we put in some walls, that'll help everybody visualize, so everybody can get off their seats and come over here. I'm wondering what the next way to do this is. I kind of want to start at level 10. Okay. 3,000. That's the combo mall premium square level. We purposefully didn't include any exterior walls on this because we wanted to kind of talk about the interior planning, and you can kind of see the outline of the building with where the colored pieces of paper end, and so the building kind of follows this rectangular shape. So when you come into the building off Congo Mall, you come into the main circulation corridor, which is that north-south spine that Harley talked about. And that provides that clarity, and as you look through, you can actually see all the way through to the outside on this roof deck. Off to your right will be this cabaret lounge with a stage on the east side of it, and then a DJ booth and some storage for studio equipment. When there is no cabaret going off, this could just be an active lounge that helps to support this outdoor space right here. And off to your left, when you come in, is the cafe. And so this will be a cafe that can have outdoor seating opportunities to help animate these outdoor spaces. And in nice weather, when the sun's out, this is actually in sun for most of the, between 10 and say 2 o'clock. All of this is in sunshine, and so it'll be a really nice place to sit. The info desk is this little orange piece that you see right here, and so when you come in, it's a place where students can ask questions and get the kind of information that you would go over to the general office to ask about. You could also look at, ask about clubs and how do you book a room within the building, those types of things. Beyond that is a club workspace, and so really it's this club support space. There's graphic workstations and those type. There's a graphic workroom, so you can make banners there. You can meet there as a group, in addition to other club spaces that you would be able to book. But this is a really great kind of resource because I'm sure nobody knows where to make a big poster right now. There is no space for that, and so that would be that resource. Across the corridor, we would have some club multi-purpose rooms, and so those will be bookable. There's a couple there's one slightly bigger than the other. We're still looking at some of these, but these two are, say, 10 people, and these two might be 20 to 25 people. This east-west corridor moving down is our second primary corridor.
Second primary.
Where we've always located an elevator bank and washrooms and kind of the services of the building. And so as you move through, you always know where the elevator is, and there's always a washroom across from that. And we wanted to make sure the elevator was visible. We're also exploring using glass elevators so that all students can get that experience of the building as you move through the space.
And the washrooms really are going to be a part of, again, the second primary access. It won't feel like you have to go through a back tunnel.
Like you do here.
This will be kind of part of the activity of the space.
And making this feel kind of like a welcoming corridor as well. There will be a window at the end, and on this side, kind of open to this corridor, there will be some lounge spaces and then some bookable meeting rooms for 4 to 6 students. So I think the library has similar rooms, so we're adding about 15 of those into this building. And that's kind of open to below to provide that visual connection to the program that's down here. Off to the left-hand side is the beginning of that kind of cascading or floating lounge. And this is basically the idea of these large kind of areas where you could sit. Some of the landings will be large enough for furniture, and so there will be some chairs and some soft seating and tables on some of the landings, and next to that would be a primary kind of stair that moves you through the building. If we're hoping to make the stair something that students want to use rather than kind of, there's another stair. We're thinking about kind of active design and making a virtue out of moving through a building rather than kind of a dread. I guess since we have this, we'll move down one floor. We should note that this cutout right here is a light well we're exploring to be able to give some light to the building, to the programs that are down underneath this space, which are kind of fully buried. So on the next level, this is the level that connects to the Maggie Benson right here. So this area would be kind of the doubling of that food court seating area, there will be a big opening in the wall. We'll take out all those windows that you can see on the east side. We'll leave the columns in place, but it will just be a seamless connection into this building. And so there's a dining area. The mini mart is located here, and then there will be kind of more another little active lounge area that would support some of this activity. And the nice thing is it's a fairly large space to hold evening events if that was something that, I know there's some stuff that takes place in the food court here, but students will be owning and operating this building, so there's no need to. Over on the other side is that you'll notice that floating lounge kind of widens out as you come down through the building, and again, providing opportunities for some furniture on there and being able to occupy that space. And then extending that open area down to the east side of the building. As you move to the back of the building, we have a couple of student organization spaces, so those are things like Women's Center or out on campus. There's also SF Perg and those types of student organizations. There's 8 spaces in the building, 2 of which are on this level. And then on the back side here, what we have some 20 to 25 person size bookable meeting rooms. So those would be in addition to the smaller ones on the floor above. And those are also bookable, and again, that light well that can help to provide some daylight into those spaces. It's actually large enough that you could spill out and have some outdoor kind of opportunities there as well. And then a games room back here that might have more of that online gaming type of activity, so there would be some infrastructure to support that. And then again, that washroom core that helps to connect some of this stuff back here. So on the 8th floor of the building, we are connecting to the service road that we talked about, which is back here. So all of this is our loading area. It's sized for a couple of larger tractor trailers, and then there's some passenger vehicle loading areas. And this gray zone is really mechanical rooms, electrical rooms, IT rooms, those types of things. As well as the washrooms, which you don't see the individual walls here. On the south side of this floor area, all the yellow areas right here are the 6 other student organization spaces. And what we really wanted to do was give each of them frontage right on a main circulation space. So while they're kind of separated, they remain together, and then they have that visibility for students. And this one, for example, fronts a smaller kind of lounge, quieter lounge space. And so there would be a destination for students who might want to be in a quieter space that would bring them down to this level. There's also that workshop we talked about, some workshop storage, some additional kind of storage areas, and then the dance and music rehearsal rooms are on this level as well. And that's partly, those need some extra sound attenuation and typically don't want a lot of windows, so we thought that was more appropriate to be down on this level.
So we're gonna work our way back up.
So now we're gonna go back up to level 10 and 11.
Yeah. And you'll see also that there's a kind of a generous cutout on this level as well, down to level 8.
Provide that visual
so
connection.
That's visual connection and daylight down to the lowest level.
What we should also mention is a lot of this stuff is below grade. On level 8, we have an opportunity for windows along this portion of the building, so there will be daylight coming in here, but this portion will be below grade. On this level, all of this is above grade and will have glazing or windows. It's not as fragile as it looks. Until we break something.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving up the building, so now this was level 10 and now we're at level 11, and one of the things that Harley mentioned on this level was when you come in, you get that double height space. So this floor actually overlooks that cabaret lounge area, and so again, being able to see what's happening up above and then creating that sense of lofty volume. One of the things that SFU, what we've noticed is there's a lot of low ceilings everywhere, and there's not a lot of kind of that sense of grandeur when you come into a space. And so what we envision is when you come in, you get that wow factor when you come into the building, because there's a 6-meter high ceiling in this lounge. Most of this floor is taken up by the SFSS admin and the board of directors areas in the orange that you see here. And then there's some lounge space and a formal boardroom in the corner that kind of floats above this area. And then a little overlook, which we're looking actually at widening this so that perhaps there's some kind of bar seating there. You could look over into this lounge, and if there's an event and it's full, there's actually a perch up above that gives students the opportunity to enjoy that as well. And then again, that east-west corridor, so this is where we're connecting to via pedestrian walkway, which you see in this beautiful little extension. It will be covered, that connects all the way to the AQ, so students can come from the AQ corridor, come into the building. The actual door will be somewhere over here, but this will be a covered kind of outdoor bridge. You come into the building and you can actually walk all the way across and be able to get to the roof of the Maggie Benson where the pub is going to stay, and they'll continue to have their rooftop terrace there. And yeah, go ahead. And then the top floor has that multi-purpose room, so as you come upstairs or take up the stairs or take the elevator, the multi-purpose room is located on the north side, but we've shown kind of a glazed wall that perhaps could slide over, and this can be occupied by students if there wasn't a function in here. If there is a function, you might close that door, but students are still gonna have access to this wonderful little lounge up here that has access to the roof deck. And I should mention, which I didn't say, all of these programs would have access to these roof decks as well. And again, that cutout, one thing I wanted to highlight, when you come in and you're standing here, you can actually see all those programs that are on these 3 levels actually, from one location within the building to help, again, emphasize that visual catalog. And you can see that this is covered. That will actually extend all the way to here. And then there'll be a skylight that drives daylight all the way down to level 10 on this floor, on the roof. The roof will not be student access though.
This portion?
Yeah, this portion of the roof won't be student access. Okay. Any questions while we're here, actually?
I have some questions. Yeah. So there is no actual study places except besides
There will be. We just haven't, the lounge program in the building includes study areas. And so in terms of individual study, we're gonna be looking at some of the lounges that, not necessarily the lounge that's connecting through the building, but isolating areas within that would be enclosed and be, I guess, more of a quiet study lounge. So in addition to the bookable group study spaces that are over here, we'll have lounges that just anybody can go into without booking in, and it's kind of the quieter study space. And we actually see some of the level 12 area being perhaps suitable for that quiet study. One thing that we've noticed is that the active lounges want to be where a lot of the students kind of walk by, because you just want it to be, okay, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to drop my stuff off, and I'm only going to be here for 10 minutes. If you're going to study, you're going to have a destination, and you're going to want to go to that level 8 or level 12, and it's kind of out of your way because there's a purpose to go there.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. I don't know if you're talking
No,
to Ross
no.
or me. You mentioned the space on the top for about 300 people. Is that standing or seated?
That is lecture. So if it was seated but in rows, for a banquet, it was around 150. One of the things that we see though is if we open this, you could actually expand, not necessarily if you were to have an event here, but in a milling about type of way, there's a pre-function kind of area that you could expand this, depending on what that wall does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, is it
Yeah.
good to have one, I mean,
Oh, sorry.
have something like this here as well, so that people that sit here, they have their daylight as well?
So the people here are actually gonna have a lot of daylight, because all of this is gonna be windows.
But it would be cool if you have that.
More skylights.
Yeah, because usually people are resting or studying here, so
Yeah.
if you can see the sky from
Okay.
some glasses.
Another thing is that not only is there glass here, but you also have a really high floor to ceiling.
Yeah.
So when the sun's on, even a bit of an angle, it's going to come quite direct into the building as well, given the high floor to ceiling.
One of the things we're hoping to accomplish with the skylight is also to drive kind of ventilation, so natural ventilation through the building. So when we start to put windows that are operable on some of these other floors, that will drive fresh air through the building, just through kind of that stack effect. If you've ever been in a tall building and an atrium at the top, it can feel a little bit windy, and that's because it draws the air up.
So we potentially have operable skylights or vents on the skylight that would open when there's a significant temperature differential, and it would draw air up through the skylight.
I still like to have that.
More skylights.
Yeah.
Great.
I was wondering about the roof, you said it won't be accessible, like the very top.
The top,
Yeah,
yeah.
could you explain the reasoning for that?
Well, part of that is cost. So
Okay.
the more accessible roofs we have, the more cost that is. It's definitely a different kind of cost per square foot when you start to look at people occupying it from a loading perspective, because how many people stand up there affects the structure, but also from the membrane and what that assembly looks like. And we felt that there's enough kind of roof decks in here that are they're adjacent to student space, that it makes more sense to make these accessible, and this is really just kind of that upper roof that.
I think you can still enjoy the view
Yeah.
of space through that.
There's a question. Oh, sorry.
What was the rationale for putting the copy center, the retail in the basement, or the mechanical in it?
Well, at this point, we're just looking at, we wanted to get your input. That was through our discussions, and looking at what areas need the student space wanting daylight, and then what other programs do we have that could be on the lowest floor versus on some of the higher floors. Our floor plate shrinks as we get through the building, and so we had to kind of judge, okay, there's what makes sense on what floors, and that's kind of where we put it. But again, we haven't had your input, and so that was our.
So,
Okay.
So how fixed is the sort of planning of the various
We're still
locations?
exploring, so it's not a final. What we want to do is have kind of final floor plans by mid-June, so that we can then coordinate with our consultants.
Because I guess my observation would be that some of the organizational groups, which are being kind of buried in the basement out of sight, are actually among the most busy and active spaces that would be in the building, not just in the daytime, but are often busy and in use through the evenings and weekends. And it certainly always seemed to me that one of the goals was to make it an active living building, not one with lots of empty quiet space and then all the busyness is hidden in the bottom of the building where people are doing stuff out of sight. So
One of the reasons that we had explored locating some of the groups, or all of the groups, to get elsewhere in the building. Our understanding was, okay, at one point they all wanted to be together, and it's a large chunk of program.
Yeah.
And as you'll know, our largest floor area is on the lower two floors. And so in keeping that in mind, we thought, okay, let's put them in a place where we actually have room to try to keep as many of them together as possible, but try to create these connections down into there, both from a physical and visual connection that helps to make that floor feel like a part of the rest of the building. Yeah, make it feel like it's not a disconnected floor.
I guess the one last comment is it doesn't feel like there's been a lot of consultation with us. Nobody's ever come and asked me what I thought about it representing my organization, so
Okay.
that feels like a bit of an oversight to this point in the plan. I mean, we're huge supporters of it,
Well, and I think that we need to then, now that we have kind of a plan in place,
Yeah.
that one that is still flexible, that's the next level of, okay, let's sit down and talk about the planning and get everybody's feedback. And make sure that everybody understands why certain decisions were made and how doing something else affects other parts of the building.
I was just wondering, in addition to male and female washrooms, if you were also going to provide gender neutral or single
So-
stall washroom?
One thing, actually, it's funny, we were just talking about that with our code consultant. So we have a requirement to meet a certain number of stalls of female and male washrooms based on code and off the code. What I wanted clarity on is what exactly the gender neutral means. Does that mean, when you go to a restaurant that has that gender neutral and you've got the shared sink and everybody has their own toilet room? Or does that mean that we, for code purposes, say, here's male, female, but then you just don't put the sign on the door?
I think, well, it could be, from discussions we've had, it could be just a sign, like indicating it's a washroom or saying washroom, but not having like a female or male symbol on there. And, I know somebody had mentioned that the library has those, and there's been some issues around people not being able to identify that it's a washroom. So I think having just like a single stall,
So
washroom that has.
There will be a universal toilet room, and that's required by code,
Okay,
and it will be on level 10.
okay.
But I think we can explore a variety. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't do something on one floor and do it a little bit
Yeah.
differently on another.
Yeah, the biggest thing is we still have to meet code, and the code doesn't recognize, unfortunately, gender neutral, and so if we do it in a way that plans it and shows it, makes it look like we have a distinction,
Mhm.
we're fine. But if we don't show a distinction, we plan it in a way that doesn't recognize it, all of a sudden we have to bump up our washroom count, and that affects the program.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As far as gender inclusive washrooms go, I'd say probably as far as safety is concerned, the most important piece is just
Yeah.
having a single stall
So there
washroom
will
that
be-
isn't
yeah.
specifically
Yeah.
gendered for only
Uh-huh.
males, only females.
So
And
a
sorry, for
universal toilet room.
Yeah.
universal access, yeah, universal toilet room, you're saying that would only be on the 10th level?
So by code, we're required to have one universal toilet room. The more we have, again, that increases your toilet count and affects the program because those do take up space. And we have a certain amount of the program that we still need to fit everything else into the building. So there's a percentage of the program that accounts for things like washrooms and circulation and that kind of gross up of the building. But it doesn't necessarily say, okay, this is how many toilet stalls we're gonna have.
If I could jump in, we'll have to revisit
Yeah.
this because I've said several times we need a gender neutral,
Yeah.
single occupant on each floor.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Make
mean,
that happen.
generally planning the washroom layouts is not a part of schematic design, so that's something that we would do in the next phase of work in this room.
When can we meet with you guys, or how do we go about that?
So I would say, let's go through Mark, and we're available to meet anytime. I think we'll have to work with Mark to find the time that works for you,
Okay.
him, and
Thank you.
Yes.
pardon me?
What about washroom?
Oh, we were just talking about universal toilet rooms and where those will be located, and what exactly.
Oh, like,
The gender neutral washrooms, which essentially what you're asking for is a universal toilet room on each
Okay.
floor.
They're asking
Yeah.
for a universal toilet.
That's what, I guess, code or what we would refer it to. It's typically a gender neutral toilet room. It also is sized to accommodate wheelchairs and.
Well,
You
you
know,
see them all the
you
time,
get
they're
the
like
baby
single,
change tables in
single
there.
stall washrooms kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
All of our bathrooms right now in the conference rooms are single bath, or
No, they're not
supposed to be.
single. It's a huge waste, because they lock too, so only one person can use it at a time unless you're willing to share it.
Yeah,
It's
that's
problematic.
kind of what tends to be, how they tend to be used right now, as far as,
It's because they weren't meant to be gender neutral, right?
The washrooms right here, yeah.
Mhm.
So they got changed after the fact,
Yeah.
but there's two stalls in
Yeah.
it, so, and it locks, so if I go in, that means nobody else.
Oh, I see. No one
We
else is
lose
doing it.
one
Yeah,
stall
yeah, yeah.
if I'm not comfortable to share it.
Yeah, I was
with-
in there and someone
You
came
say
in
it's
and I was like,
violated
this is really
or
weird.
So, but they
Yeah.
weren't designed that way.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah,
regular
yeah.
male, female washrooms, and so that was done many years later. And so you do lose two toilets,
Yeah.
basically, when
Someone's occupying.
someone's occupying it, yeah.
Keep working on
Any other questions?
I have one more
Yeah.
question. Maybe you've talked about it, I got a bit late, so. This building is near Convo Mall,
Yeah.
and there are times that there are some ceremonies or activities going on there. So,
Mhm.
and if you're looking for a quiet place to study, literally this side of the library is useless. So, have you guys done anything, consider any noise cancellation strategies?
At this point, we haven't gotten to that level of detail, but we will look at what kind of glazing would be most appropriate on this side. There are some, depending on what we want to get out of this, there may be some glazing strategies we can have that can help mitigate that noise. Apartments always have to consider these things when they're on a busy kind of street or in downtown. And also looking at perhaps having more quiet study spaces on the south side as well. That could help mitigate the building becomes a barrier or noise barrier.
And it kind of works both ways, right? There's the possibility that there might be something really active happening within the new sub that you actually want to keep quiet to some of the areas that like a combo mall. So you get into things like insulated glass that have different sound transmission classes, and there are ways in which you can mitigate the acoustics.
Yeah, that would be useful because I'm thinking most of the lounge areas at this side. So.
The lounge is actually scattered right throughout the building. I think what you're seeing is that front floor lounge, the green here, this is the multi-purpose room.
Okay.
And so that typically is meant to be an active space, but when it's not used, it could be a lounge space. And especially like we're looking at perhaps having something along the perimeter that might be a space where students can sit, perhaps the bar that spans across, and helps to kind of activate what happens here when, so that there's life up in that building, on that floor.
I have another question that's really non-relevant to this, but you said something about putting butterflies.
No, I was just talking about kind of the roof. I did say butterflies, but I was talking about the roof planters and supporting kind of local native habitat, and thinking about when we had the sustainability workshop, we talked about the convention center. They actually have they harvest bee. Harvest would be the right word.
They collect the
They keep bees there, and they actually collect honey. And so, is there an opportunity to support kind of habitat on these rooftops? Whether, I don't know if you want bees on your building, but perhaps it's butterflies or other insects and birds and those kinds of things.
I guess I'm still kind of just a little concerned that by segregating I realize the rationale for including for putting the majority of the student organizations at the bottom floor. Yeah. At the same time, though, I feel like that's still kind of, it's basically just moving the rotunda from an area that's kind of out of the way from the rest of the student, or from the student services, down into a bottom floor into an area that continues to be less accessible and less used. So I realize there's still room to play with that, but I still kind of see that as an issue. Because it seems to be that the majority of spaces that students are going to be accessing seem to be on the top 3 floors. And then it just kind of progressively peters out as they move downward. So.
But they are busy spaces, so I do see a lot of students going down 1 floor or 2 floors or whatever it is to get to them. Like, I don't think they're going to be deserted.
I don't think they're going to be deserted, but at the same time, though, even on multiple buildings here, West Mall, for example, you get a lot more students on the 3,000, 2,000, and then by the time you hit the 1,000 level or 0 level, it's kind of not anybody's down there, particularly in the evenings, which, as far as what I've heard from students over the past couple of months, there has been a desire to be able to to see this place as a home, and therefore even late night studying, there's still space available for them that isn't necessarily out of the way.
I think one of the things that we tried to put on that, and again, this is great feedback because we haven't had this at this point. I recognize the fact that we haven't met with every group, but providing programs on the 8th floor that actually are a destination was really important, so that it wouldn't be a dead floor. We recognize that moving up or down 2 flights could, for some students, just might not be that. They'd rather stay on the floor they're on and not have to go downstairs or upstairs. But putting something like the dance studio, which is a destination, the workshop, which is a destination, putting the student organizations, those are destinations, into that space to help activate that floor. Because when you look at this, we do have a large amount of floor area that we have to put program into. And that's kind of, we tried to put things that were places that students are going to be like, hey, I'm going there for a purpose.
I think you also can't discount, and I think I hear what you're saying, but I want to make sure that we're aware of kind of the open to below areas that go down to 8, and it's done in such a way that it should feel like a continuation of the language of the terracing stairs and the cutouts throughout. So it shouldn't feel like a kind of a basement per se. It's agreed it's the lower level, but there will be a lot of kind of open to below areas that will allow people to kind of look down then access the lower level. So I think it's important to kind of imagine the visual connections that you can have.
I guess one question that would be really useful to ask is if we have programs down on level 8, if it's really undesirable to have the student organizations, what are the programs you feel that you would be okay with having on that floor? When we think about the lounge spaces, the meeting rooms, the student club space, the SFSS admin suite, what are the spaces that you feel would benefit, I guess, if these groups benefit from moving up, what would be appropriate on that level? This is input.
It's
I think the music space and the dance space would be appropriate for the bottom level.
Yeah.
It's good they're down there already.
Well, the concern is noise,
The
you know?
study spaces.
And what's the activities that are happening in those spaces. So if you have louder spaces mixed with office spaces, that could be problematic as well,
So there are ways to deal with that with acoustic treatment within the rooms, how you build the wall to achieve certain sound transmission ratings, and so we can accomplish that with just the construction of the wall assemblies.
I guess we're just pretty hypersensitive in this building because you can hear what's going on 3 offices down the
Yeah.
road, you know, in your office, so noise becomes a bigger factor.
I guess to me it seems like the smaller, like you have the 4 to 6 person conference rooms over there. Those, I mean, the library has, on its lowest floor, has those types of spaces, and they're constantly booked throughout the year.
Yeah.
And they're destination spaces, so that sort of space to me is perfectly fine to leave at the bottom floor, because that's what students are used to, and that's a space that will be used regardless of which floor it's on a consistent basis.
How much floor space would that give you?
Not a lot, but we would also have to look at redistributing. The groups won't be able to stay together, is I guess what it comes down to.
It's a distribution question.
If the groups are okay with being separated and fitting, because this is the area of one of those organizations, so it's a fair size room. When you add the 3 kind of rooms associated with it, so we may have to consider that one is sitting by itself somewhere in the building and another one is sitting, maybe there's 2 somewhere, but they won't all be together. There will have to be
And
kind
when
of
we did consultation, which was thorough,
Yeah.
we heard that they wanted to be together. That was important to the groups that exist currently.
I've heard I'm offering something that I've heard other people say about the whole keeping the student orgs together. And I've heard some people say their opinion is keeping the groups together means more we're actually all in the same building. As opposed to the idea that some people get left behind.
Got it, okay.
So that is, I think, one of the interpretations of
Yeah, no,
staying together.
that's valuable. And if that's the interpretation, that's great, because I think that's one of the things we struggled with, like, we don't have a space that all of these groups can sit together, other than on level 8, and even there we were struggling to find room for all 8 of them. Comments? So we'll just finish this and then we can have some more discussion. We're here till 1:30, so there's just a few more slides. So this is just kind of that section that we talked about earlier. I'm just going to flip through these really quickly so you can see how the spaces kind of connect. So this is the closest to the east side where that kind of cascading lounge connects to some sort of lounge space here and perhaps some sort of kind of lounge space here. And then as it moves up to level 12 in that multi-purpose room. And then the walkway that connects across from the AQ, and when you come in, oh wait, yeah, that's, no, the walkway's here, sorry. This is a little bit further from the walkway, so, yeah. So the walkway would come in here and you can see some of the programs here. You can see down into the other part of the building, and then that lounge as it moves up and down through the building, and then coming in And you can see all the different cutouts. That's one of the things we wanted to highlight, where providing these cutouts in the floor plan actually give you a lot more opportunity for that larger volume. One thing we didn't mention was the floor-to-floor heights are 3.8 meters floor-to-floor. That sounds like, oh, that sounds pretty good, but when you add mechanical and structure and lighting and all these things, it tends to drive your ceilings down. The reason we're at 3.8 is because we're connecting to all these buildings on campus, and basically our floor levels on the bottom 4 floors are determined by the AQ, Maggie Benson, and Commonwealth. And so really only on the top are we kind of freed from that restriction, and we can play with the height of that space. And so providing these cutouts helps to create some relief in that lower floor-to-floor area when you come into parts of the building, and helps to create visual connection and bring daylight through. And then looking at that, this is that primary north-south corridor that runs through here and then terminates in a stair, but if you're standing here, you could look out. And then again, that on the west side of the building, if you remember that diagram with the yellow and the blue wrapping it, so looking at, all of a sudden when you get to the west side of the building, a lot of that program kind of gets filled in on this side. And so the building is a little less open on the west side. Some contextual stuff that we're starting to explore some of our exterior expression for the building, and looking at or drawing from the SFU context, which is a very kind of horizontality on the overall kind of massing, but then there's that vertical element created with the fins. And so this is a little hard to see, but looking at each of the elevations, and we really developed these more to get a costing set. These are going to change quite a bit at this point, but in order to get a costing from our cost consultant, he would want to know kind of what are the materials we're thinking of, where are the windows, where are the solid elements. One thing we should mention is that we're looking at, in order to meet, there's new energy codes that have been passed in British Columbia and Vancouver, and one of the things that it requires is that in order to follow what the prescriptive requirements are, you can't have more than 40% glazing for windows. And so it'll be a fine balance of putting windows where we really want them or need them, and then getting a balance of that opaque walls or solid walls in the other parts of the building. What helps us is that we have this below grade area that we can count in that 40%, so there's no windows below grade. And what you see here is the east elevation, so this is the side facing the AQ. There's the outdoor kind of plaza. There would be steps on the side of the building, and we didn't get a chance to build them in here, but steps here that would bring you around to this area from the outdoor plaza, and that will help to also support some of the, there's currently deliveries for the AQ that park out here. There's a loading area, so we'd be able to accommodate that through here. Yep.
I just wonder, it's hard to tell from your cutaways, but does the cascading lounge go all the way down to the 8th floor, or does it sort of end at the 9th?
Yeah, but it gets narrower at that point. We've explored keeping it as wide as we can, but then that starts to affect how much program we have, and so we've narrowed it in that area.
So is it just a stairwell at the end?
At that point, it's shown just as a stairwell in here, but we're going to continue to explore. But yeah, the cascading lounge kind of moves all the way through. What you don't see here, this is actually level 9 at this point, and level 8 is below here. This is the west elevation, so this is the side that faces the theater. We can't have a lot of windows on this side, and that's partly because we're so close to the theater that we need to, and this theater's not sprinklered. If there's a fire there, the code requires us to be a certain distance away. And so, or have solid walls, and so we're looking at areas of opacity, and then where we have windows, trying to meet what the code requires. That also helps us though, because the hardest side of the building to control solar heat gain is the west side, because the sun tends to do this, and so where do your shades sit unless they move with the sun? And so that, given that theater and the Maggie Benson up to, I guess, the level 11 are going to actually block our views for the most part on this face. Level 12 is the place where we might explore some windows, but there will be some services on this side. On the north elevation, so this is looking at Freedom Square. What you see here is double height windows with some sort of sliding partitions to be able to create that indoor-outdoor kind of space for that for the cabaret lounge. There's the upper multi-purpose room overhanging that, and then the front entrance and a cafe. And then on the south side of the building, what you see here, this is where you really get the full 5 stories, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then that south area where we can provide windows for the full height of the 8th floor, or level 8, I should say. So just quickly schedule. So we are currently in design development, so I took off anything that's been done to date. And that's gonna run until August 2014. I mentioned that we would like to finalize floor plans by mid-June, so all of this input and meeting with everybody is gonna have to take place before then so we can get to that. And the reason we're pushing to finalize those is because there's a lot of coordination with our consultants that needs to happen in order to get to the end of design development. And that includes like putting furniture into rooms, not the final furniture, but at least showing, okay, well, we think a couch or a chair or a table is gonna sit here, and if it has power, where's that gonna go? Those types of things. And so we need time to be able to get to that. And then we'd also like to start working with students to select finishes and those kinds of things that are really gonna give life and character to the building. In September, we hope to start working drawings. So basically that's where we sit down and we draw the building in a way that is going to be built. And that's so a contractor can come in, that he looks at the drawings and he can put a price to it, and then he can build from those drawings. And they look very different from anything that we've shown to date. They're more technical. And then February to March, we'll be putting it out to tender, so that's when the contractors are able to bid. April to April, so it's about a 2-year construction period that's gonna happen. And in the time frame, within that construction, we're gonna start furniture selection. So sometime in September 2016, we'll start working with students to identify, well, one, we'll identify all the areas that want furniture or need furniture, what that's gonna look like, give it a feel, and provide some options of what that might look like. And then in May, when the building is actually finished being built, we will look at installing the furniture, and I believe that the building will be open to students in September of 2017. And that's just a graphic schedule. Oh, one more slide! A graphic schedule that shows that kind of progression of 2014 and then 2015 all the way through to 2016 and 2017.